Good afternoon and welcome to the budget review hearing. We're going to be hearing this afternoon from 7 different departments who wanted to make a presentation to the council to increase or to take a look at their proposed budget that will start July 1. I want to give you just a little bit of information about how we do what we're doing here. First of all, my name is Judy Thomas, and I'm the budget chair for the council. Councilor John House is the vice chair, and between the two of us, perhaps we can get through this and this new, the new budget. One of the things that we have done for these many years is when the mayor has proposed a budget to us, we give department chairs, department managers the opportunity to come forward and make a presentation to us to seek changes in what they have been approved. And the counselors in this session use what we call the add delete list. That is, if a department chair wishes to add something to their budget and a counselor agrees that it should be added, we can add that. Now, we have always, and we will continue to, say to whoever comes before us, if you want to add something to your budget, we need a source. And if it is an ongoing addition, an ongoing expense, for example, a salary, then the source of your money needs to be an ongoing source. So I noticed that there were a couple of the things that were on the add delete list from last week that are not ongoing, so we may have to do some changes in some of the things that we are proposing. We have with us today, of course, our mayor, Mr. Skip Henderson, and our city manager, Isaiah Hughley. And Mr. Mayor, if you want to start us off and bring us words of wisdom, we'll be ready for that.
I'll leave the words of wisdom to the city manager. But no, I don't really have anything to say other than just appreciate the work of the council as they work their way through the budget process. And I'm here really to lend any information from a backdrop standpoint. If you have any questions about how something was considered, I'll do my best to answer it, probably by saying Miss Alexander. But we'll try to add any anecdotal information that we can.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Budget Chair. I don't have anything at this time.
Then I'm going to turn the podium over to Ms. Alexander, who is our finance director, and she will help to get us through the next hour or so. Ms. Alexander.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Budget Chair. Just very quickly, I'd just like to just go over the schedule in terms of the next series of meetings. So today, we'll be hearing from various departments and elected officials. Next time we meet will be May 25th. This is prior to the regular council meeting. This meeting starts at 2 p.m. and the only item up for discussion on that day is the add delete list, which, as the budget chair mentioned, any items that have been added to that list by any member of council. Council will vote on that list on that date. The next meeting is a public hearing. It's for the public, so if any department director or council member wants to come, you can most certainly do that, but this hearing is for the public. It is our first Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing. That first meeting or hearing will be June 8th at 9 a.m., and it will be here at the Trade Center. The second Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing will be that evening at 6 p.m. This is during the regular council meeting. Also on that date, we'll have the first reading of the budget ordinance. The next meeting will be June 15th, in which we'll have our third Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing. That is a 9 a.m. meeting. That will also be held here at the Trade Center. We'll have our second reading of the operating budget ordinance, as well as the first reading of the millage ordinance. And then the last meeting for the month of June will be June 22nd. That is also a 9 a.m. meeting. It is a regular council meeting in which council will adopt the second reading of the millage ordinance. So I just wanted to give this out the schedule, Madam Budget Chair. In terms of who's on first today, the first department that we have here to present is our Parks and Recreation Department, followed by our internal auditor. Then our probate court judge is here. Our Public Works Director will be followed by the finance presentation. And we do have some representatives here from the coroner's office. I was notified very late notice that the coroner himself will not be here, but representatives from his office should be here, as well as the Department of Elections and Registration. So with that, Madam Budget Chair, we can proceed with the meetings with Parks and Recreation.
The director of the Parks and Recreation Department is Ms. Holly Browder, and she will be making a presentation for us this afternoon. Ms. Browder.
Good afternoon. Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, members of council, if I can have my presentation put on the screen, please. Thank you. I come before you today to ask, of course, as has been stated, for additional funding for Parks and Recreation going forward, just looking forward, I guess I should say. I want to give you a few facts going forward about what our department does currently, more so for obviously our community and also for those watching from home. Facts about our department. We currently manage over 1,900 acres of park space. There's 52 parks, 50 linear miles of trail space, 44 public playgrounds, over 80 athletic fields, 81 tennis courts, 19 basketball courts, 82 restrooms. On a daily basis, we maintain 750 liter containers of trash, or litter containers of trash. We operate the Lake Olive Marina, a dog park, the Mulroney Museum, 2 before-school programs, 12 after-school programs, 8 recreation centers, and 4 senior centers. We also have the Britt David Cultural Arts Facility and the Haygood Boxing Facility, as well as a therapeutic recreation facility, as well as the Columbus Aquatic Center, and of course our outdoor pools. Just wanted to make mention so that our community and those watching from home would know what it is that we operate annually. Also wanted to give you a quick look at what our department consists of. Currently, as of May 6th, I lost my screen, but currently as of May 6th, our department currently had a total of 249 employees. You can see the breakdown here of how that breaks down by division and by area of the department. I make mention of that because over the last 20 or so years, our department has lost approximately 86 positions. That's important because Over time, it's gotten harder and harder for our department to maintain and operate the facilities that we have, the parks that we have, and manage the things that we do. So I wanted to, of course, show you currently where we are with the number of positions that we currently, or number of employees that we currently have, and where we have been over time. And why is that important? It cuts down on the number of programs that we can offer. It cuts down on how quickly we can respond to citizen concerns, citizen requests in our parks, for our facilities, for our seniors, for those with special needs, for those in arts. All of that goes to show what we can and we cannot do on a daily basis. Now, to go back a little bit, I wanted to show you what our operating budget has been like over the last few years, and actually more than a few years. So I went through and we've listed what our operating budget has been for the last 17 years. It also shows you the capital budget that had been approved by council with each of our operating budgets. And then on the third line, you'll see what was the capital funding that we were actually expended in that year. And what does that mean? The actual capital funds that were spent means that at some point we were able to come back to council and we were asked to be able to use our budget savings, which was authorized by city manager and city council. We've always prided ourselves as a department that has been very conservative. We've been a department that has been a good steward of city funding and operated our department very well. And as a result, many times we've been able to come back, even when we weren't able to get capital funding maybe from the beginning, we were able to use those funds to perhaps help ourselves many times to buy equipment, to buy vehicles, to buy machinery, to buy the things that we needed to continue to operate our department, because it's essential for us to have the tools for our staff to get their jobs done. So I just wanted to give you an idea and show you over time what that snapshot would look like, and how much funding we've seen, at least over the last 17 years. And you'll notice a lot of zeros sometimes. And then you'll see that in many ways that there's a zero, but then below it you'll see that there's actually a dollar figure. So I think that speaks highly of our department and what good stewards we've been to be able to come back and be able to get funding that could help ourselves going forward. Now for the ask, and we do have a lot of asks this year. We are a department that for many, many years has not done a lot of ask in regards to some of the things that we needed outside of park services, which is equipment. But we've reached a point in our facilities after 20 years or so that we have got to have things to continue. In our recreation services division, which recreation services constitutes our rec centers, our senior centers, our cultural arts facility, our therapeutics facility, and our boxing gym. That's what recreation services constitutes. So in recreation services, we're asking for 2 digital pottery kilns at a cost of $10,000 each for a total cost of $20,000. Why is that important? Because the kilns that you see on the list today, anytime we bring anyone in to work on them, there's no one locally. We must bring in a vendor from out of town, and typically it runs us about $4,000 every time we bring them in to work on. Our kilns are old, they're out of date, they're hard to be serviced, and so it just doesn't make good cost-effective sense anymore to spend $4,000 each time they have to be serviced. So we're asking to get those updated. Also, when it comes to the digital pottery kilns, they no longer operate efficiently, and so now we have to have a staff person sit there with them every 2 hours to turn them up, where normally you should be able to just turn them, set them, and let them operate and run the cycle that they operate. That's manpower, that's hours that we have to devote to a staff person doing that. So now we can't be flexible with the limited staff hours that we have. We have to have them to sit there and make sure that they schedule their time and they fire the kilns when they can be there to operate those. Scoreboards, scoreboards and recreation section. We have the original scoreboards in our rec centers, okay? Our newest rec center was built in 2002. I know because I was the director at Northside when it was built in 2002. All of our scoreboards are the original scoreboards. We desperately need scoreboards in our rec centers so that the kids can play basketball, so our adults can play basketball, and so that we can use them not only for basketball, for volleyball and other sports. So we're asking to replace the scoreboards in the 8 rec centers because, like I said, they're all original scoreboards in those rec centers and desperately need to be replaced. Again, I moved down to pottery kilns in our senior section. Those need to be replaced, same reason as the digital ones. They're old, they're falling apart, and every time we have to have them repaired, it's almost half the cost of purchasing a new one. And then the last thing I asked for in recreation is a vehicle. You guys have heard me in the past. I've come before and asked for vehicles because we're a department that needed vehicles desperately. The vehicle that we would replace in the Recreation Services Division is a 1998 23-year-old Ford Crown Victoria. It has 114,633 miles on it. The city's policy is 12 years or 120 and also 120,000 miles. So yes, it's 23 years old, so we meet the criteria for the 12-year mark, but we don't quite meet the criteria for the 120,000 mark, but it's 23 years old. So as you can imagine, it's costly to upkeep. We continue to have issues with it. I shared with one council member a few weeks ago, we got the vehicle out of the shop. We had it at the office. They drove it to complete a task. They cut it off, went to get back in it. It wouldn't crank. It literally had just gotten out of the shop and shouldn't have had any issues. They go to drive it again, it cuts off, won't crank back up. I mean, and it's a constant battle with this vehicle. We spent more time that day in staff hours than we should have. But the vehicle's 23 years old. But that's a constant in our department. That's a commonality in our department, that our vehicles are aged. So we would ask for the vehicle for their division to replace the 98 Crown Victoria. Moving forward, I know as budget chair mentioned earlier that we always want to have ongoing funding when we're asking for positions. And unfortunately, I can't come to you today and I can't say that we have ongoing funding for our positions. But I would hope that you would reconsider in this position. We would like to reopen Tillis Gym. Tillis Gym is in the Midtown area. You can see here what it would take as far as what we're asking. We're asking for 1 full-time staff person and 3 part-time to operate the facility. That's minimal, I'll be honest. When I started with the department 19 years ago, our rec centers had 1 full-time director, 1 full-time assistant director, and 9 part-timers. Most of our facilities are very lucky today if they have 1 full-time and 4 part-time. So you can see the huge cut that our department has taken over the years. But this is what we would ask as far as reopening and operating. And I say that because in the last 2 years, we've worked with CDBG to completely renovate the Tillis Gym for that neighborhood and that community. There is no recreation center any longer in the Midtown area. The closest facility is Flew Ellen and Boxwood over by Carver High School. So there is no facility for youth in that community. We have recently, in the last 2 years, put in a new roof, completely interior renovated the facility, and completely renovated the parking lot to make the entire facility ADA accessible. We also put in a brand new playground, all to the tune of a little over $740,000. So I would like to see us be able to take up the investment that we put in the facility and make it worthwhile for the community, not only just as a summer facility, which is how we will use it this summer as a summer camp for kids in the community, but year-round for that neighborhood so that people can benefit from that facility. So that is our big ask there, obviously, and no, Ms. Budget Chair, I apologize that for this time we cannot make it an ongoing funding. Most years and every year we've come forward previously, at least since I've been the director, we've been able to make it budget neutral, but unfortunately we have cut every position, unfunded everything we could over the years that we no longer have anything left to really unfund in that way. But that goes to, that would be Tillis, the reopening of Tillis Gym. Whoops.
Okay, does anyone have questions about the Recreation Services Division? Anything that Ms. Browder has? Mm-hmm. We can come back to this if you want us to take a look at it. Okay, Ms. Browder. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Now, wait.
Both her, the 122,000, that part, the recreation services, and also the gym, the staff. Yeah.
So you're looking to add, Counselor, the digital pottery kilns, the scoreboards, the electric pottery kiln, the mid-size SUV.
Yes, ma'am. And also her positions, the one full-time grade 14 and the 3 part-time grade 3.
Well, typically what we would ask you to do is to tell us where you're going to be getting that funding, because we don't have that kind of funding.
Well,
Mr. City Manager?
That,
I was going to talk about the ARP in reference.
well,
I know that's kind of,
yeah, that would not,
no, I'm talking about as far as the digital pottery. the
well,
equipment.
let me just suggest, and I've been talking to the mayor here, and we've been talking. Obviously, we don't recommend adding ongoing operating expenses like those positions that have been mentioned. But I've asked the finance director to look at their current budget, the 21 budget that we're in right now that ends June 30th this year, to see if they've got some capacity to purchase some of these things and not exceed the current budget here in 21 that ends June 30th. And they do. And so, Madam Budget Chair, what I would recommend, and I've consulted the mayor, is that we be allowed to just continue to take a look at the current budget, and we could, those things, if she would put that slide back up that showed the kiln and the car and the $122,000, we could bring you those things to purchase out of the current budget, and then it would not impact this budget. It would be the current budget that's scheduled to end June 30th of this year, but we would not and do not recommend those ongoing expenses like personnel and other operating expenses, but we could help with that car, the capital stuff, if that slide, if you would put that slide back up. And so that's what we would recommend.
One of my questions was, what was the revenues lost for Parks and Rec during the pandemic? Because that's where I was trying to see where we could possibly use, some ARP funding for some of those things that she was requesting.
Yeah, revenue recovery is an allowable expense. And that is a one-time, return. But I think what I just shared with you is a way to get those things, but not those ongoing operating expenses.
It's the digital pottery, the scoreboard, the
That's what I'm saying. That would come out of the current budget.
Is that ongoing, or is that like a one-time?
No, that's a one-time small capital expense that we would not have a problem with.
Okay. All right.
I keep asking for that slide to go back up, and I don't see it, Yeah, and but so those would be one time. Go back one
more.
right there. So the digital pottery kiln, scoreboards, electric pottery kilns, and the mid-size SUV would be one-time expenses that we could look at the current budget and bring them back to you on the next council agenda or sometime 1st of June, and you get those approved and they're done, and you're not dealing with the 22 budget trying to put this stuff in it.
With this budget, okay.
But then that's what we would be able to do, but not ongoing operating expenses. Those are not ongoing operating expenses.
Okay, so Mr. City Manager, you want to bring that back to council at our next meeting?
Yes, as part of the purchase agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sure.
City Manager, in doing that, would it affect any programs that are projected already in this time frame? Would it affect any of her operation funds till the end of June if you did this now?
No, because remember, we have about 45 days left in this fiscal year.
Okay.
And
she
so
should
we're
be
about to
coming
close
in.
out this fiscal year.
Okay. Could we look at these extra employees like at mid-year or sometime later in the year? Can
I
we
mean,
revisit that? Revisit
certainly-
don't mean it's gonna be approved.
Yeah,
but
we could certainly
see.
revisit it, but in the middle of a budget year, I don't recommend adding operating expense like employees and all that.
Okay.
Yeah, but we could certainly look at it.
Could we look at that, finance director or mayor, sorry. Madam, can we look at that or look into the near future with some of these other fundings that we're getting in the future, see if we can accommodate
Well,
that?
I know that Director Browder has some more information for us, right?
Okay.
So
I'm
let's
done.
see what that is. Counselor Crabb.
Oh, I was getting ahead of myself a little bit. I was looking through her presentation, and I was just going to see if we have the funds for all of the capital that she's asking for. How much of it can we take out of her current budget?
Well, and that's a good question. So what I've talked to the finance director about and consulted the mayor about, since you've seen me walking back and forth between the two, the finance director has indicated that she is comfortable with up to $300,000 in the current budget. So I know we're getting ahead of her, but I would say to you, listen to the rest of her presentation, but then allow us, if you'll allow us, to bring you back up to 200,000, which could be mowers, but in other words, we could say to her, here's $300,000. You tell us your priorities,
Okay, right.
and that we take all of this away.
Then let's put on the add delete list, Ms. Alexander, non-reoccurring expenses, Parks and Rec, $300,000. And then you can come back to us and say, what we're gonna buy is the SUV, the da-da-da-da, that kind of thing.
Well-
Does that work, Mr. City Manager?
Well, Madam Budget Chair, I don't think we need to put it on the add delete list.
I just don't want us to lose it.
Yeah, no, and we're not, because she's going to make a note that it's
Okay.
deferred
I
to
don't
the,
think Holly would let us lose it.
it's deferred to the 21 budget up to $300,000, and then she'll take it from there.
Great. Now, Ms. Browder.
Can I add one thing before we move on?
Sure.
I know Ms. Brown, just all I wanted to say in relation to what Councilor Woodson and Councilor Tucker were asking, city manager has made it clear that one of our priorities is where we can in some of our targeted or troubled areas with regards to violence and some of those things. We do want to be more aggressive with opening neighborhood rec centers. So with the funding, the capital that's already been expended in Tillis, it makes sense that would be one of the priorities. So I say that to say this: we will continue to look for ways, and we'll be monitoring the revenues as they come in, because Ms. Alexander's been very conservative in estimating revenues, even though we've been a little aggressive in some of the one-time expenditures. So we will be keeping an eye on that, because that's a priority.
All right, thank you. Ms. Browder.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. If I can have the, thank you. Okay, so moving ahead, so the next item that we had on our list was a vehicle for our athletic division. Athletics, of course, handles all of our athletics for the city, and you may find it interesting to know we do not have a vehicle for our athletics division. Their vehicle was salvaged many, many years ago, and they have never received a vehicle back in place of it, so they do not have a vehicle. So, of course, we were asking for vehicles so that they would have one to do their daily responsibilities, and so that was the ask here for the vehicle for their division, as they do not have one. And so it would help them as far as transporting items to South Commons for sporting events and activities that they host at South Commons and Memorial Stadium on a weekly basis. Next, I move ahead to Lake Oliver Marina. Again, unfortunately, this is another area that does not have an ongoing funding match. When Lake Oliver Marina was renovated and remodeled in 2009, and the city took it over and Parks and Recreation began running it, we were told then that we would start out there and it would be reevaluated. Well, we are 12 years later, it's never been reevaluated, and so we are in desperate need of staff. It has operated with 1 full-time staff member and 3 part-time staff. We operate 84 hours a week. So with the current staffing load that we have, we only have enough hours for 127 hours. And you may say, well, that's more than 84. Yes, it is more than 84. But typically you want to have 2 employees there because we not only cook, but we sell bait, we run the cash register, and we're doing multiple things. And so we don't necessarily want our cook to go over there and handle worms and bait and things of that nature. Neither would you if you're the person ordering the hamburger. And so we typically always like to have 2 staff members there. And so if you do the math, 2 times 84 is 168 hours. So you can see we are quite short by about 41 hours from having enough staff to always have 2 people there. So we were asking to add 2 part-time positions. Would we love to have another full-time? Yes. We would love to have another full-time person because typically right now, anytime anyone is out, we have to find someone from another division to go down and help operate the marina, which is a hardship on every division in our department, in particular admin, because there's not many people who can run the point-of-sale system and have the ability to do revenue cash handling. And so typically the person comes from my office, and it's an executive staff person that has to go there. So it is a hardship on us every time someone is out. No offense to them, because sometimes people get sick, sometimes they go on vacation. Things happen. But it does make it very difficult for us to operate that facility on a weekly, daily basis, knowing that we don't have enough hours to cover to have 2 people there. And again, we would love to have that other full-time person, but we know it's a lot less expensive for us to have 2 part-time. Thus, that's why we asked for the 2 part-time positions there, keeping with the same minimal grade that we have. That's what everyone else is that's part-time. So that's why we asked for 2 part-time positions. In addition to that, we had also asked for cameras to be put in and upgraded at Lake Oliver. That was also done in addition to a request by Councilor Davis, who we had recently had conversation about, and he asked me to add it as part of our budget. So that's the cost for us to add in additional cameras for security there at Lake Oliver. And also we were asking for dock bumpers. You can see the picture below of the docks there at Lake Oliver. The dock bumpers would be those portions that come down on the long post there, which allows the boats to pull up and not get scratched or torn on the side of their boats. Many times we get complaints from citizens because ours are worn out and need to be replaced in some regards, or at least that's the complaint we receive. So we were asking to have those dock bumpers replaced with new ones. And so those are the 2 requests that we had in addition to additional help at Lake Oliver Marina. And our big request is always, of course, park services. We never have enough equipment. Our equipment is aged. In years past, we've only asked for lawnmowers because we desperately need them, and vehicles, which we always are in dire need of. You can see here, though, this is our comprehensive list, which actually has been part of our budget request for many, many years. But we have failed to bring it to you because we needed certain things more, like vehicles. But we're reaching the point where our equipment is aged. I mean, just being very, very honest with you each and factual, that our tractors are aged. Our utility carts that we use in the parks to haul equipment and to haul supplies with are aged or broken down, or they're non-existent anymore. And so it takes us twice as long, if not 3 times as long, to try to do the work. And in some regards, we can't get a truck in certain places that we can get a utility cart. Mowers, we need specific types of mowers, of course, to cut certain fields in certain areas. Trailers, our trailers are worn out and falling apart, so we need those. Flatbed dump trucks, where we can dump when we go and pick up limbs and debris that fall after storms. Many of you email me about storms, and people complain about limbs and debris. These are the trucks that go and pick up those items. And the other part to that is a grab-all truck. You'd be interested to know our department does not own a truck to be able to pick up the trees that get cut by forestry. So when they're cut, we actually have to go in and cut every single tree down into a person-sized manageable piece that we can pick up, because we don't own the equipment as a department to do so. This would help us to be able to pick up some of those items a little faster, those trees that fall down in the parks on a regular basis or that forestry has to come in and cut because they're a liability. This would allow us to be able to pick up some of those items with this equipment, because our department just doesn't own it. We don't have it. So we're not able to do it. And it takes us, like I said, twice, if not 4 times as long to do it, because it all has to be cut down into manageable pieces so our employees can do the work. And then, of course, ball field groomers, which are equipment that is used for managing our ballparks, and Steiner mowers are specific mowers that are used to manage our fields as well. So these are pieces of equipment that, for many reasons, we've not asked for in a very long time, but ours are just worn out. But they're necessary components to maintaining our youth fields here in Columbus, from Woodruff Park, where we have so many young players who play soccer, to our premier our fields at South Commons, where we have people from all over the country come and play. And so that's the ask for these pieces of equipment. And the one thing I did want to mention that is not part of my presentation today, and why it is not, is of course our pools. Many people ask about our pools and having our pools reopened, and as you know, and I made a presentation a month or so ago about our pools and the need there with our pools. We're hoping to be able to either use funding through SPLOST or put that on our list in the future for SPLOST versus ask for it today. But I did want to at least mention it so that people would know that we do intend and are concerned and see the need for it. But we know that that's a big ask because it's millions of dollars per facility, and we currently need 3 new pools and our outside pools. But we just wanted to make mention of that, and that's why it's not part of our presentation today.
Councilor Crabb.
Thank you. Can these tractors and all of these for park services, could those also be part of the SPLOST? I'm trying to look for ways of getting this. I was thinking SPLOST, but I was also wondering what's the relationship between Parks and Recreation, who maintains the field, and then the Sports Council that gets the events there? I'm wondering if funding can come from another source, because do the organizations have to pay to play at one of our fields? How does
No.
it work?
Well, it's a partnership with Parks and Rec, CVB, and Sports Council in terms of going after the event, because those events cost. If they go after a softball tournament, a lot of people don't know, they do use hotel motel tax money. They get 1% of the CVB's 4%. The Sports Council gets 1% of that 4%. And when they go after an event like softball, they may have to pay $35,000 to get that tournament.
Pay them, okay.
And so that $35,000 may bring $1.52 million in economic impact. If they come here and play a week and they bring mom and pop and your grandparents and all, and they stay in the hotels and eat in the restaurants and buy our fuel and do all, there's a return on that investment, but they have to buy that. They're competing with other communities who are willing to put $50,000 on the table in some cases, when we may lose an event because they put $50,000 on the table and we put $35,000 on the table. So they go after the event. The CVB, the Sports Council, land the event. We provide the facilities, prepare them, and so it's a team working together to get it done.
And if we were to use SPLOST for all of this equipment, we're looking several years in the future, and she needs them sooner than that.
Well, we typically would not use SPLOST for this kind of equipment.
Okay.
You know, years ago, we were able, because typically, you know, we're going to do bonds and go through the development authority. I don't want to explain the whole of that,
Okay.
but it has to be something with collateral,
Right,
a
okay,
building.
I get it.
Yeah. And so, but, you know, some things through the GMA lease and other means, we're able to get the equipment we need, whether they be garbage trucks, police cars, or whatever, you know. So, we, but not SPLOST, but, and not through sports council or hotel motel tax or people coming in, but it'll be through some lease pool or straight out purchase.
Okay, so I'd like to add this equipment to the add delete list.
The equipment,
Well, if she would put back up what so that we can see the list, and because, you know, what I said earlier is that, I know you heard me, but the $300,000 would allow her, we'd say to her, here's $300,000, you select all the items from either of the lists that you shared up to the $300,000, and they could be tractors or whatever, mowers, and then we would I'd bring them at the next meeting or the meeting after that in June, that she could go ahead and purchase it now.
Thank you. I started from the beginning of her presentation, and I'm adding things up, and she's up to 192,804. 107, 196 doesn't even put a dent. I mean, in these, she could get 4 zero-turn. Well, she could get some of them, but not.
Mr. City Manager, I would assume that, from what you said earlier, anything in her presentation that is equipment could be considered
Yes.
for.
We would say to her, here's $300,000, go through your list and spend up to $300,000 selecting the equipment would be your highest priority.
Okay,
Okay, that's what I was.
okay, then that's fine.
That's what we're saying.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I just need clarification in terms of the add delete list. So Councilor Tucker, in terms of the capital that you originally requested, that is being removed. In terms of the personnel for Tillis Gym, that stays for 123,000.
No,
Okay.
Yeah, the
I just need to
yeah.
I'm just making sure that I have the list correct. And Councilor Woodson, your referral was to look at mid-year? Okay. And nothing from you, Councilor Crabb? Got it. Thank you. Right. Mhm. I got it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Browder. I will note for the record, it is 2:30. We had talked about being through with this session in 30 minutes. And it may be that if you get us through here in 30 minutes, you get a cookie, a prize. Okay, Ms. Alexander.
Right, and thank you, Madam Budget Chair, for being the keeper of the time. You know, as instructed, the department and elected officials were advised to keep their presentations brief. Next, we have the internal auditor, Mr. John Redmond.
Welcome, Mr. Redmond.
Thank you, Council, Madam Budget Chair. Today, I'm here to make a request for an additional position for the Internal Audit Department, another forensic auditor. Our workload has continued to increase. We're currently got a little over 3 years of audits on schedule. We added another one this morning for the request from the probate court. We need more help, and we need to be able to get to them faster. And currently, we've got several very large departments that we're auditing, and those take quite a bit of time. For example, the police department is budgeted for 12 months, the fire EMS is for 9 months, and the sheriff is for 6 months. Okay. Okay. So that's a total of 3 people that would be in our budget. It's an increase of about $91,000 for the year. That includes the salary and benefits that are budgeted by the Human Resources and the Finance Department in their budgeting process, and also the continuing education and maintaining licenses for these certified personnel. I've put together a very quick slide for you, one showing where we were as of December 15th. At that point, we had 3 months and 10 days worth of audits on hand. And then I take it out to May the 11th, which is today. We've got 36 months and 7 days. You might wonder how that increases. Well, we've added several additional audits since that time to the list that you all have approved. We're also looking at what the future holds for us in terms of continuing turnover. We've had a lot of department heads to turn over. There's going to be more, I'm sure, but some of the ones that have left have been very critical positions in large departments. We've also faced with this year of having to do audits on a number of elected officials, positions that changed out, the district attorney, the sheriff, and others, and these things, they take time to do, and they haven't been done in a while, and they need to be done. Now, I know we always look for funding sources. You know, as I said, we've got over 3 years of audit activity pending. We've got additional audits that are being intermittently requested, and we need to increase the availability of our audit staff to perform needed audits. And the additional staff would provide more flexible time staffing to address time-sensitive projects. Back in December, we had one that came up right at the end of the public accounting audit that was being done by Malden Jenkins, and they requested that we go in and re-establish a balance sheet for a department that they had determined to have a material weakness. In doing that, we were really not sure what we might find, but there was some good news that came out of this. It really kind of flipped around as we went through it and restruck the balance sheet, because with the assistance of the city attorney's office and some external attorneys, we were able to determine that there was statute of limitations on some of the liabilities that they had recorded on their books, and that some of those would, and also there were some for which claims were not receipted properly and couldn't be proven. So what that resulted in was us being able to identify monies that needed to come to the city in the amount of $1,330,000, which was found revenue. And then additionally, we identified about $2.2 million of additional monies that needed to be reserved for any possible future claims over the next 3 years. Thus far, they've identified about 30 or 35,000 of claims, but that's a nominal amount. So there's potentially additional monies that will come from that one audit. So I guess from a funding source standpoint, found money's as good as any. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Redmond?
Madam Budget Chair, I just have a comment, and I just want to be clear that Mr. Redmond is accounting for this, but within the last, I guess, 60 days or so, 60 days I'll say, when we had all the challenges going, he made the request of bringing on additional help. And we brought on an additional auditor for him. And that auditor position is included in the mayor's budget for 22. So he is getting a position. So are you counting that position? Is my question. Because that's a position he did not have 60 days ago.
Mr. Redmond, are you counting that position, or?
That is the position that we're
Oh, yeah.
asking
Well,
to
that's
be
all. That's in the
continued,
budget.
made to be a permanent position.
It's written into the mayor's budget.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, I believe is saying that will be a permanent position.
Yeah, it's in the budget.
It's in there.
Yes.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Redmond.
I'm sorry we didn't clear that up with him, but you know, it's written in.
Next office, Madam Budget Chair, is the probate court, and our probate judge, Mark D'Antonio, is here. And he has a slideshow presentation.
Welcome, Judge D'Antonio.
Good afternoon. Y'all will have to bear with me. I'm having some vision issues that continue. This is my version of the PowerPoint, which I hope y'all could put on up now. And probably just let's go to the first page. Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time to have me. I promise to be as quick as I certainly can. I can't see the clicker, so. Laura? I'm sorry, there's, as I said, more than y'all probably want to know, but this is not going to help me. The past year and a half have been very challenging for all of us as we try to keep staff and the public safe while providing services to the community. As a class of courts, the probate court has been hit harder than most in terms of COVID. We've lost 3 probate judges statewide and 1 chief clerk. I think this is because probate judges have more contact with the general public through weapons carry licenses, applications, than other classes of judges. Meeting the public demand for weapons carry licenses has been extremely challenging over the past year, and Muskogee County's demand for weapons carry licenses has increased dramatically. So I want to talk about the impact of the judicial emergency and why we need more supervision for license applications. The probate court was closed for weapons carry licenses and marriage licenses between March 14, 2020 and May 18, 2020, yet we processed more weapons carry licenses in that 10-month period in 2020 than we did in all of 2017. Currently, the probate court is processing all renewals by mail and up to 20 appointments a day. So far in 2021, we have processed over 1,800. As shown in the next few slides, we have experienced unprecedented demand for weapons carry licenses during 20 and 21. As a result, during FY22, I anticipate a significant increase in revenue from weapons carry licenses a return to normal, in quotes, about revenue from marriage licenses. This is why I'm asking today for a meager increase in my budget to reclassify one of my senior clerks from a G14B to a G15B. With this promotion, my clerk will have more responsibility supervising licenses, plus will have the power to act as the judge in uncontested matters if needed. This reclassification has already been approved by the UGA CSU folks that, as being appropriate. I do have good news for y'all. Walk-in services for weapons carry licenses and marriage licenses will resume on June 1st. I'm confident that opening up for walk-ins will not decrease my revenue. More good news for the public, at least, the Tyler upgrades that we went through in 2019, specifically Tyler Eagle, which handles the marriages and guns, speeds up the way we can process weapons carry licenses on the front end. But the bad news is Tyler Eagle doesn't talk with Tyler Odyssey in terms of the financial components of it. So it's much more complicated on the back end. In fact, Mr. Redmond made a reference to the coming to see the probate court. I wanted Mr. Redmond to review our systems to see if there's any way of streamlining those while still maintaining good practices. The separate back end part of this makes closeouts essentially double in terms of the work, and because of that, that's another reason I really do need to reclassify this position for more supervision. Let's go to the next slide, which many of you may find it fascinating. I started working in the probate court in 2006. During 2006, I was the chief clerk and a number of other titles, including pro-hack judge, and I essentially processed 804 weapons carry licenses that year. Our projection for this year is based on the average number we've done for the first 4 months of this year of having 5,100 weapons carry licenses processed this year. The jump in looking at this chart, it's interesting to see the biggest jump originally, which I thought was an astronomical number, was in 2008, and some people referred to that as the Obama effect. If you do see, there seems to be jumps in election years, but the numbers continue to trend up, and I really don't anticipate them ever dropping significantly. Let's go to the next slide. Have we? Okay. Conservative estimates for increased revenue from weapons carry license applications in FY 2022. The revenue derived from every weapons carry license is $27 to the Columbus Consolidated Government. 22 of it is netted to, comes from fees charged by the Muskogee County Probate Court. $5 is a fee we collect for the sheriff for the fingerprinting and background check processing. I can give you all a breakdown of why the main difference between a renewal, which is $35, and the new application, which is $79, really comes down to the GBI, FBI charging us $43.25 for those background checks. What I did in terms of showing that this is really a revenue neutral request given my increase in revenue is I'm projecting 5,100 new weapons carry licenses this year, but let's work with 4,000. 4,000 is a very conservative estimate. 4,000 weapons carry the most weapons carry licenses we'd ever processed was in 2019, and that was 3,264. So the difference between a very conservative 4,000 and, like I said, it may very well be another 1,000 over that. And our highest point before that was 736 new weapons carry licenses. Doing the math, 736 times $27 a piece comes to $16,192 in increased future revenue. And as I said, 4,000, I don't ever see us dropping below 4,000 again, absent significant changes in our society. So the cost of the increase in my reclassification is $2,189. I'm confident that we can sustain revenue to support that increase of $2,189. Let's go to the next slide. Why enhancing the probate court license supervision by improving my reclassification makes sense and sense. This is what happens when I work on things at night. I start getting a little too clever. As I said, projected revenue increases, demand for weapons carry licenses far outstrips the supervision expenses. It's, as I talked about, it's revenue neutral as a result of it. This is an important part of the supervision. It will reduce process-related errors. I haven't had an increase in staff. We had half the staff working at home. To use the passive voice effectively, mistakes were made. I'm confident, well, I actually know that Counselor Allen and I believe Counselor House were both contacted by constituents related to concerns they had about how fast I was processing their weapons carry licenses and other things. In one situation, we had 2 people with the same first and last name apply within a week, and I made a mistake. We ended up mailing their weapons carry licenses to the wrong individuals. I trust having a supervisor. I'm not going to say I'm ever going to eliminate mistakes, but I think having more supervision will really help address that. It's also a lot cheaper than adding a deputy clerk, which different probate courts have different approaches. Macon, whenever they have increases like this, they'd add another clerk. In Columbus, I've always tried to be smarter and smaller and more efficient. And I think by increasing supervision, as opposed to saying I need another clerk, is a much cheaper, better value for the citizens. The reclassification's impact on, we all talk about general reserve. I like to break things down to general reserve. The impact, assuming, well, first of all, as I said, my revenue will in fact increase, but assuming it didn't, the impact on the general reserve fund balance would be under 6 minutes. If you want to be exactly precise, it'll be 5 minutes and 48 seconds. I can tell you how I broke that down. Does anyone have any questions? So let me reiterate. I'm asking for a promotion of one of my senior clerks to a senior clerk with licensed supervision and the ability to act as the judge in uncontested matters. The cost to this city in terms of an increase in my budget is $2,200 and change. And my revenue and the efficiency and probably the number of calls council folks may get about mistakes being made will be reduced significantly. I think this is actually a bargain in the long run.
Judge, you said the increase is $2,200?
Yeah, actually, if you want to go back to that slide, the cost, according to Ms. Alexander, when we submitted our budget, was $2,189 annually.
And is this, Ms. Alexander, Mr. Hughley, make sure that I'm doing this right. We are proposing increasing salaries throughout the government. Is this one of the ones we are proposing to increase?
I didn't include the 2. Well, I used whatever numbers Ms. Alexander gave me. I don't know whether she included the 2% that y'all are talking about in July.
No, it is not, and it sounds like he is requesting to maybe change a title and change some duties, responsibilities to allow. It's a reclassification is what
So
he's.
this would be over and above what we're going to be doing?
This
is
no,
moving, yeah.
not over and above, because, we're proposing a 2% pay adjust cost of living.
Right.
And that would be where you shift the whole pay scale because of the cost of living and not a pay raise. And so they would get that, but he's asking to reclassify the position. It would cost $2,189 to reclassify it based on what he's requesting, changing the title. Now, typically, those all reclassifications go through CSU. I don't know that it has been
We
sent.
have gone through
He
CSU.
said
It
it's
did.
gone through
Okay,
CSU.
so then, yes, it would be just a reclassification that has already been approved by CSU. It was not budget neutral, so he's asking you to approve the reclassification, but he needs $2,189 to do it.
In the 20,
FY22.
In the budget that we're discussing, yes. So $2,189 is what he's asking for.
Councilor Garrett.
I'll make that add. I think that's a pretty reasonable request considering their increase in volume.
Yes.
So we will put that on the ad list. Ms. Alexander? Do
I got it.
you have the information you need to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Judge D'Antonio, I've got to tell you this. You said something about we're going back to normal. Normal is just a setting on the dryer.
I agree completely. We're going back to, I guess, a new normal. What I really meant by that is to say that I anticipate our marriage licenses were down during COVID, but I anticipate that number will go back to exactly where we were beforehand. Plus, we're going to have this exponential, and we continue to have this exponential demand for weapons carry licenses.
I've tried for years to get you to do if you get your marriage license and your carry license the same day, you get a discount or something, but they
If
won't
council
do
will,
that either. So.
well, honestly, my fees are tied statutorily. I would love to do that if council wanted to. Well, actually, maybe we need to think about that a little bit more. It is harder to get a weapons carry license than it is a marriage license, and from a societal point of view, I'm not sure.
As it should be. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is Public Works, and we have Director Mike Criddle here. This is his first budget presentation to council, so I would say be nice, but.
And this is your first presentation to us?
First budget presentation, yes. So y'all be nice. Mine's a little more than $2,189, I will tell you that.
We'll try.
Oh, perfect. I'll start off with the general fund capital needs. This is right after the cover page of your packet. Got three basic areas. Animal control. We've got 3 vehicles that you can see the mileage are at or above 200,000 miles. These are your service vehicles, the trucks that go out with the bodies on them to actually catch the animals. And they're $74,000 a piece. We are spending an inordinate amount of money on maintenance of the vehicles every year. I am going to be brief unless there are questions here. The next item are surveillance cameras. We talked about surveillance cameras a while back when I was here talking about illegal dumping and what have you for this same group. And one of the things that we proposed was to put $110,000 for surveillance cameras in the budget, self-contained units that are solar powered, license plate recognition software, etc. We are still having a tremendous amount of dumping around the city that we just continue to fight. It's an uphill battle. I feel like we're rolling a rock up the hill every night and it rolls back down. So that's $110,000. That's for 10 units. The last one in general fund is the cemeteries department. We don't have a backhoe in the cemetery department, which is kind of necessary. Apparently we've never had one. We borrow one, and it has become we've experienced some delays and some angry folks about getting backhoes and getting equipment over there to actually dig the graves. And so that last one is for the backhoe and a tandem axle trailer to move that backhoe around, from the 3 cemeteries that we're responsible for. So that total for the general fund is $539,308. Questions, or I'll move on. Gets better from here.
Any questions at this point?
Questions?
It doesn't look as if there is, so let's move to the next page.
Okay. The next one's integrated waste. We've got a lot of capital needs in integrated waste. Integrated waste is what hauls and buries your garbage and everything in between that. Most of this stuff is at the landfill. There are some other items in there, but all these are what I deem necessary for the landfill. We've got service trucks, inmate transport vehicles, route supervisor, that is part of collections. It's all part and parcel to garbage collection and burial. We've got a crew cab flatbed that we'd like to have for our cart delivery. As you saw from Lisa's presentation earlier, we get 100+ requests a day for cart deliveries, and we're currently doing that with the street department. So guess what that does? That takes the street department off the street. They're not fixing potholes, they're delivering carts. But that's what we've got to do. We're doing what we have to do right now, but we're very, very underfunded and undermanned. The Roper Survey Station is also a very critical piece that the landfill allows us to make sure we get the right amount of compaction and cover, and not too much cover. It's real easy to cover things up, but that's a GPS machine that allows us to keep a close survey eye on the height of the landfill, the working cell. And then there's a couple of more items on there. The gators for landfill observation, and the SUV is for our compliance officer. The last one on there is a big ticket item. I realize that. It's also very neat. It's a convenience center for our citizens. We don't have a convenience center. It's something we've talked about, and I've heard mentioned more than once in this room, that would be really nice to have an area at the landfill for people to bring stuff. If they had stuff to bring, bulky items that they didn't want to wait for the truck to come around, that they could go ahead and bring it out to the landfill. And that's what this is. And this is actually a reduced number. Matt and his group out at the landfill have done some work, some preliminary work as far as the grading and site preparation, but it's going to take about $500,000 to complete that, to make that a workable, user-friendly convenience center for folks to bring stuff out there. And it could be anything, mattresses, cardboard, what have you, anything that's big and bulky that they don't want to leave out in their yard for the folks to pick up. Now, everybody talks about funding source. I have one too, and I have one that's not popular. Our current garbage collection fee is $18 a month, and that includes unlimited everything. We have unlimited bulk, we have unlimited yard waste, we have unlimited garbage. And that's just not a sustainable model. That's not a sustainable model in this city, and most of the other cities I've talked to, as a matter of fact, all the other cities I've talked to have eliminated this completely. They don't do this at all. Nobody does unlimited anymore. You can't do it. And for several reasons. It's not just, we don't want to. It's impossible to plan routes because you don't know how long it's going to take. That's why the bulk routes are 2 weeks behind. We did a eviction a few days ago, and I had 2 grab-all crews out there for 2 days. 2 grab-all crews for 2 solid days. I just can't do that. We've got to change the model here. We've got to change that paradigm. We need to go to an eviction system where the landlords are paying for that, not the citizens. Because the citizens are absorbing that landlord's eviction right now. It may not be direct, but it's indirect. They do it in time, and that's what puts our crews so far behind, and that's exactly what happens. But we're not able to fund, with $18 a month, we're not able to fund the three areas. And that's why all that capital that you saw on the previous page is on that page, because we don't have the money to buy it. And if we don't have the money to buy that capital, pretty soon there's going to be other things that are going to fall through the cracks. It's just inevitable. What I can propose to you today, and we've worked very, very hard on this, a $3 increase per month will fund your integrated waste fund for the next 10 years. You don't have to touch it. I realize it's a third rail of politics for sure, is that rate increase. I get it. But I think having stuff on the street and sit there is worse. We're in a worse situation now. And guys, right now, we have put Band-Aids on a cancer patient. I don't know any other way to put it. That's what we've got. We've got Band-Aids stuck all over him, and he's dying quickly. And that's the integrated waste fund is dying. We can't fund this. We just can't keep doing this. It's going to implode, and when it does, it's going to be ugly. Just like the trucks. Lisa mentioned in the presentation earlier, we got 7 to 10 trucks down per day, and that is a fleet working all the time. We've got a contract service working now a couple of days a week to try to keep them patched up, and I do mean patched up, because that's all we're doing. We're patching them up and putting them back out on the street because we've got to. But that $21 a month, it's a $3 a month increase, $36 a year per person, per household. And that replaces all your critical capital on a 6-year cycle, which is what they last. These things don't last 10 years. They actually say they last 5. I believe we can go 6. Our data shows we can go 6 with some better PMing, and that's coming. But this allows us to meet all of our growth cycle for the next 10 years. That covers it. I'm going to point out I know there's a lot of numbers on this page, and I've circled a group of numbers here. Scenario 4 was the last scenario that we ran with our consultant. And if you notice on the very top line that it's got annual capital purchases outright, the last 2 scenarios, 3 and 4, reduced it from about a little over $7 million to $900,000. What we've done is move some of that infrastructure to SPLOST. And that allows us to lower this. Otherwise, that number, that $21 a month number, would be somewhere around $26 a month. And that seems like a good way to do it. But the chart at the bottom, the very bottom part, shows you what the capital requirements are. And when I talk about the 10-year plan for integrated waste, that's everything. That's your closure of landfill cells. That's post-closure. That's every bit of this. Everything that happens. That's your convenience center. That's the whole works. And I would certainly like you guys to consider that, because we're at a critical juncture here. The 8 trucks have certainly helped, and I've heard more than one of the counselors say in this room, what happens when the COVID money runs out? I believe Counselor Thomas said that today. I know Counselor Davis has said it before. It's true. We can, the $20 million that we're talking about spending is fantastic. That will bring Columbus up to a current modern level of collection. No doubt about it. We will be the envy of everybody around us. You containerize all your waste, and by containerizing it, it's a de facto limiter. You get 1 can. If you want to get another can, it costs extra fee. So you got the 1 can there. So it actually encourages people to be better consumers. Don't buy as much, recycle more, do better things, but allows us to do it much faster, much more efficient. But when those trucks have got a 5-year life. Those brand new pretty Mack trucks you see on the side loads, that's 5 years. That's that's the hardest duty you can put on a vehicle, because you're stopping every 200 feet. Stop and go, picking up heavy loads. Very difficult. But this covers that. That $3 covers those vehicle replacements on a 6-year cycle. It covers you for 10 years. Don't have to talk about this again for 10 years. And the last slide, I believe, is just showing you the capital that's been removed from that. And with that, I'll open it up for questions or discussion from anybody.
Questions? Anybody? Charmaine? My computer has gone fluid.
That's difficult. What I've looked at from other cities, and I'm glad you asked that, because I've actually got a sheet here that I printed off Savannah's website today, and they do a $100 fee plus tippage plus whatever the tonnage is, and that puts them a dumpster out there, and they can request it doesn't really matter as far as what dumpster. If they need a 10-yard, 20-yard, or 40-yard, they just call and tell them I need a 40-yard dumpster out there, and it's a $100 fee plus the tippage. That seems to be that's low, to be honest with you. If you do, you can actually go on some of the commercial hauler sites, and you can put in your address and how much is it? And the average address around here for a 40-yard dumpster is about $700. That includes tippage, obviously, but it's very, very high. So even with tippage, typical eviction would probably be, it'd probably run around $250, something like that.
Thanks. I would recommend that you try and do an average of what the tippage would be and up that price, because
Just make it one fee?
yes, not add the tippage, just increase the $100. And the reason why I say that, I am a property manager, and so we're probably, you know, just to have one fee for everybody would probably work better, because we're going to pass through that charge. The landlord will pay for it, but they're going to turn around and charge the tenant after the fact. And so if we know that up front, say it's $250, then we put that into the lease, saying that there will be a $250 eviction charge or something like that. So I would recommend thinking in that direction.
Okay, no, good suggestion. Thank you.
And Councilor Crabb, I will tell you that we have met a couple of times with a number of landlords and discussed this issue, because it's a huge problem, because when they dispossess these individuals, they put everything on the street. Within an hour, it's scattered over 4 blocks. And then it just stays there, because we don't have the manpower to go out there and start raking it and fleecing it up. As Mr. Criddle mentioned before, it took 2 crews 2 days to do one eviction. Now, we have talked to the landlords, and one of the we'll go back to them and try to come to some kind of finalization for this, because we were trying to avoid increasing their costs, because we know their profit margins are only so slim, but we also don't want to add this to the tenant. So we actually talked about the possibility of taking it straight out of the building and putting it right into a truck, so that they could then just leave the site without leaving it out there and just take it straight to some type of depository.
I definitely like the idea of bringing in a container and putting it on the premises. So we just, if we have an eviction, you know, we call you when we know that we're going to have an eviction. We tell you the date that the sheriff is going to be there, and we just get it all done. And that would make it very clean, very convenient. I like that idea.
We'll pull that group back together, and we'll get you in there to as kind of wearing 2 hats. One is a counselor, and one is the landlord too. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything
And
else, Counselor? Counselor Woodson?
Yes, I just wanted to add one item to the, and delete list, and that was the, backhoe.
Well, and Madam Chair and Counselor, if I may, just
Sure.
before you.
I'm always open for comment.
Yeah, you know, and I've talked to the finance director, and again with the mayor regarding what's could be available this fiscal year in the public works budget based on the current spending and the fiscal year ending June 30th. But let me just say that, you know, as we look at the ARP funds, I'm just addressing all of his, you know, regarding the rate increase and all of that. You know, you've heard us mention numerous times about the possibility of ARP funds, and subject to your approval, if we get all of the money that we've been told we're going to get, that we would want to look at automating waste collection and eliminating the use of inmates. And I really think that we should kind of take a wait and see approach if we're going to get the dollars, if we get the dollars, if the mayor and council will approve automating our system, that we don't use, we eliminate inmate labor in waste collection. And so, you know, if we do that, I don't know that we ought to be talking about a garbage rate increase, but at least let's wait and see if we can make that happen. And that's related to the integrated waste. And even the other equipment related to integrated waste that he has mentioned, he's got a $778,000. To the animal control, the $539,000. And the finance director shared it with me, and I shared it with the mayor, and we've talked. But like with Parks and Rec, the finance director is comfortable with up to $250,000 out of this year's budget, which means we could bring something back before the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, at the next, if not the next meeting in May, then meeting in June. And so what I would propose is like with Parks and Rec, though it's only $250,000 and he's expressed needs much greater, that we allow him to use $250,000 out of the current budget, but let him prioritize, what that might be. And certainly he could get a backhoe if that's his priority, and one service vehicle, or he could get service, but let him prioritize that based on his highest priorities, but
Right.
up to $250,000.
Dr. Hubley, I wasn't talking about all the items in his,
I know.
in his agenda. The only one I was talking about, because it concerns me, is the cemetery.
Yeah.
That's the only one that I want to put on there to ensure, because he has all these other needs, and $200,000, he can waste that in just that one item, or on the cameras. But I'm really, really concerned about the backhoe. That's the only one that I'm wanting to put on the list.
And if we do the up to $250,000, he could certainly purchase the backhoe.
Okay.
And then, of course, the mayor mentioned something that I guess is worth mentioning. I know the police and fire, not related to what year, that's the backup.
Yes.
But the police and fire are looking at cameras, and the mayor was just suggesting on cameras that they could really, I guess, Mayor, pull those
Well, I think that the cameras can have, they'll be multifunctional, and they should be transportable. So if we're going to move them from site to site where we're having continuous problems with illegal dumping, we can also use those, because if you overlay those areas, a lot of these are the same areas that are struggling with poverty, struggling with some of the violent crime issues. So I think if we consolidate our purchasing power, we'll be able to get a better deal on the cameras and deploy them according to the needs of at least those three, and maybe even other departments. And I did want to make one comment, and I may need Mr. Alexander to correct me if I'm wrong, but this does not impact the FY22 budget technically, but in one sense it does, because if we use some of the budgeted funds that weren't expended in 21, it could have an impact on the estimated number of fund balance days at the end of FY22. For example, we were talking about 98 days. I think 98.3 days is what we projected. And of course, it's a year and a half away. It's kind of hard to get it right on the head. But if we do use some of these funds, that will have an impact on the estimation of those days.
So if you use them by putting them and add the lead, it's going to impact. And if you let us go ahead and purchase out of the current budget, either way, it would.
Either way, it's going to affect.
Yeah. So.
Well, I would think that, excuse me, without objection, we will allow the finance director and the city manager to make these.
And yes, ma'am.
Without objection from the council, we would allow the city manager and the finance director to make the kinds of decisions that you're talking about with Parks and Rec and with Public Works.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry?
And the department head.
Yes.
to be
Yes,
part of it.
absolutely. And the finance director is saying with the increases we're seeing in the TAVT tax, ad valorem tax, and the sales tax, she's comfortable with.
Okay.
But I want to ask one more thing. We're talking about the
ARP.
Yes, funding. Are we keeping a list of some of the things that we're considering to look if we can use that money based on the conversation we're having here and so forth? And I'm saying that because just like Councilor Thomas said earlier, let's not forget to go back like for the Parks and Rec. So I was just wondering if anybody's keeping a list so that when we go look at that, we can say during a budget session or during council, there was a need for this item, that item. Are we willing to spend the one-time expenditure on that item?
Well, let me just say this, and I was talking to the mayor, I guess, yesterday, the day before. We've had every department head to submit what they have researched to be allowable funding for ARP. Okay. And the staff team compiled a list, and that list, of course, we know that we're projected to get $78 to $80 million, and so every department has submitted for some of that funding, and I mean, I'll just simply tell you, $78 million based on what they submitted is not enough money. So, but they've, I guess the point I'm making is that while we are making reference to them looking to the ARP, they've already submitted another list to the team, and they've got every single department who has submitted a list calculated in that allocation. And we know, obviously, all department heads won't be able to get all that they've put on that list, but the list is very extensive.
And I'm sure Miss Alexandra's keeping a list.
That's what I just wanted to make sure a list is being kept based on our conversation.
Yeah,
Department.
she's recording it.
Director
Yes.
Criddle, you have anything else?
Yes, I actually have one more item. I have a budget neutral change. I would like to add a car shop supervisor by deleting a couple of other positions in the shop. And like I said, it's budget neutral. I've given that information to you.
And Madam Budget Chair, budget neutral positions, we don't have any concerns with. Like with Judge, those who have come before you were not budget neutral. Others that were budget neutral, we didn't make an issue of them. Because we got to yield to the department head's discretion. But so if you have it in it, if he's asking for it and it's not in the budget, it does need to be put on that delete list.
Yes, so the value of what he's requesting is a new car shop supervisor grade 17 position. That cost is $54,802. There's also that position was reviewed by Columbus State University. There was also another reclassification that was reviewed by Columbus State University. It was for the I forget the actual name, but it was a grade 19 going to a grade 20, and the cost was $3,019. Financial operations administrator, sorry. So it was the assistant fleet manager, grade 19, being reclassified to the financial operations administrator, grade 20, at a cost of $3,019. His proposal is to delete two positions in fleet, one fleet tech maintenance 1 and another fleet maintenance tech 2. The value of those deletions is $87,128. So the net difference is actually addition back to the fund balance of $29,307.
Thank you.
So that would, as the city manager mentioned, need to be added to the list.
Yes. Councilor Crabb,
Councilor Crabb.
did you?
Is there an addition to the list?
Oh, I did have a question. Thank you.
What?
I do have a question. I haven't been on council when we've asked for a rate increase, so in waste. So how does that go about? What happens?
Well, first of all, I think if we were going to propose a rate increase, we would not abruptly drop it on you at budget review. We would go through a rate study, and then we would come to you in a series of meetings and explain that here's the revenue that we get from 65,000 households or however many, and here are the expenses to show you where we're short with the gap. And then we would say, here's what we currently charge, and here's what we need to charge to break even, and then we would share with you the comparable cities to show you that it's not out of line. And then we would ask you to approve it, the new proposed rate.
Okay, so it comes through the manager's agenda during...
We would bring it through that process, yes.
Okay, sounds
And,
good.
and let me just add, because the city manager won't tell you, but I know in the time, and I know a lot of the counselors haven't been through a rate study. We used to get these, Mayor Pro Tem, about every 4 years, 3 years. And so they've been telling us, and back then it was a $25 or $30 recommended fee, because we were also trying to accrue funding to handle closure and post-closure, which is an exorbitant amount of money. And eventually you run out of land, and you have to have something that you have set aside so that you can procure more land. And we knew the can was being kicked farther down the road. But it's just a very, very difficult thing. I mean, it's a tax. It's a user fee, and we have been very, very sensitive to holding the line as much as we can. But we, as Mr. Criddle has explained, I think it's time to bring another study, take a look at it under current conditions, and allow council and the public just say, well, this is what it is, so we need to figure a way to deal with it. And you know, there are other things that can be looked at, perhaps even a graduated increase where maybe you just scheduled that increase over 2 years or 3 years. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. But I think it is time. I think there's several counselors who have never had the benefit of looking at everything that goes into operation of the Integrated Waste Fund. So we didn't put it in the budget, even though it was recommended, because we did not have time to do that study and then bring it to you. So we'll bring it back during this fiscal year, and we've been, I think, put on notice by Mr. Criddle and by our city manager that it needs to be addressed.
Well, that's what I was talking to Ms. Hodge about, where it was showing that they were increasing just, minuscule amounts, $1 or less for several years in a row, and then since 2018 there hasn't been an increase. And so from his recommendation of going up $3, it's actually less than $1 a year since we had our last increase on that. And so probably is.
Yeah, but I think it's time, because we can also take a look at, and I know we've talked about the ARP funds, but it's been publicized, I think, by the city manager that we don't know for certain yet, but that could be an acceptable expense. And if it is, it may have an impact on what that increase needs to be and when that increase needs to be made. So we'll bring it back.
Yeah, I think some of the issues that we've been having this year is showing that we're at the tipping point, that we've stretched it out maybe as long as we could, and now it's starting to affect our quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I absolutely agree, and I know they were working on a rate study. I don't know if it's complete, if they've completed it, but they've been doing some work. And but considering these ARP funds, and as the mayor said, if we're able to do the heavy lift of that equipment out of the ARP fund, it would have an impact on what the rate should be if we adjust the rate. So we're going to continue to work on that. And Madam Budget Chair, someone would need to put the budget neutral request on the add delete.
Okay, we've got a couple of people in line.
Sure.
So, Councilor Garrett.
I was gonna make the add too, and I concur with Councilor Crabb and with what the city manager and mayor have been saying too. We don't want to have the same thing we had happen with the tax reassessment countywide, where we had to catch up for years and years and people were sticker shocked. I hear about crime and I hear about trash. Those are two things my constituents have never complained to me about wanting to pay more for, to have better service. And I'd rather us catch up now with what I think is a very minor increase of $3 a month, and then us institute some sort of rate study system that will continue to graduate that as needed, because we are providing way more in service than what we are charging. People don't get that because the rates have always been very low, but it's just the truth. We all know it. We're all constituents ourselves of this city, and it's something that if we don't keep up with it, people are going to get real upset. They're already upset with the lack of what we're able to do with our resources. So, I think this is a time for us to make that change.
Thank you. Councilor Tucker.
Can I ask a question about the customer convenience center? I know you said the 250,000, that's what Angelica would actually add for him to decide. But can we really look at the customer convenience center? Because if that's going to allow people to actually go and, drop off their large items, I think that would be an asset and would actually help with the blight in the community as well. So I don't know if that would be an add delete item, or would we just add it to our study, or how could we address the customer convenience center?
Well, the customer convenience center would be an integrated waste expense. Mm-hmm. And the integrated waste fund should be self-sufficient. It should pay for itself. And only because we've not done rate adjustments we've had to buy garbage trucks out of general fund in the past, and we shouldn't be doing that. And so the convenience center is in integrated waste. It's an integrated waste expense. If we have a rate increase, then you'd have the money, but we just don't recommend using general fund money for integrated waste expenses. Mm-hmm. And so unless you're going to do a rate adjustment for that integrated waste, where you would have the money to then do a convenience center, we'd have to continue to do what we're doing. People can still take it there, but they've got to take it all the way back in the landfill and drop it off. We all, at some point in time, a lot of us have taken white goods or even yard waste to the landfill, and you can take it and they weigh you in going in and weigh you coming out, and you pay a modest fee, $1.60, But the convenience center is an integrated waste expense is the only point I'm trying to make. And we should not use general fund like the $250,000 that we said for general fund that we would bring back. We shouldn't be using that for integrated waste expense.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have 3 more departments, and that will be all of the presentations to us that we have at this point. So we'll get with Ms. Alexander, and she will make a presentation for the Finance Department.
Madam Budget Chair, was that Public Works budget neutral put on that,
Yes,
Lily? Okay. Councilor Garrett
Councilor
did.
Garrett.
Okay. Okay.
Ms. Alexander.
Turn her on.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Thank you. And I'm going to do this presentation Speedy Gonzalez style. So just the payroll department, which lies in the finance, the payroll division, which lies in the finance department, we're responsible for all employee garnishments. Those have to be answered within a certain period of time so that the city is not liable for those garnishments, child support payments, tax levies, W-2, 1099 processing. If you need copies of your W-2, we'll get that to you too. So I just won't go through the extensive list here, just some of the responsibilities there that you see that we handle in payroll. And just sort of by the numbers, there are 2 full-time employees in payroll. We serve over 2,800 employees. Now that is excluding the seasonal employees and the retirees, and that puts that number well above the 3,000 mark, but 2,800 full-time and permanent part-time positions, processing over 70,000 payroll deposits annually, as well as the timely filing of federal and state tax returns in excess of $110 million and 16 million in tax deposits annually. And so when I actually polled the top 5 cities in Georgia, which Columbus falls in the top 5, and just to see what we were in comparison to, in staffing in terms of what they have. And of course, Atlanta being the biggest, they have 9 full-time people in the payroll department serving over 9,000 employees. Augusta, they have 4 full-time employees serving over 2,800. Macon has 4 full-time employees serving over 1,500 employees. Savannah has 3 full-time employees serving 2,500 employees. And again, Columbus, here, we only have the 2 serving over 2,800 employees. So my request is simple. I have a payroll supervisor who I'd like to express my sympathies to. She actually lost her mother this afternoon. But she is...
Did you say she lost her mother?
She did.
Her payroll supervisor.
My payroll supervisor. But she is a person that will not quit. I will absolutely say that. She is one of the hardest working people in this government. And I will put money on that. I will put my house on that. She is one of the hardest working people for the city of Columbus. And she is eligible for retirement next year. I have one other employee in the payroll department. And my concern is, if she decides to, whenever she officially decides to retire, there is 25 plus years of experience that's walking out the door with her. We need another person in payroll. Just with the number of employees that we have, you saw the comparison there from the other top 4 cities in the state. We need at least one more person. So that is my request. This year, it is unfortunately not budget neutral, but if we're, and I could talk numbers in terms of revenues and what the finance department collect. We're responsible for at least 10% of the general fund revenues that we collect in the revenue division, but I won't use that. Obviously, revenue offset, that fluctuates, and obviously, I wouldn't allow any other department to utilize that as a funding source as well, but I am asking you today to consider adding to the list a full-time payroll specialist, G16. The cost is $54,802.
And Madam Budget Chair, if I may, I said at the first meeting as she did the overview that, we wanted to her to come before you, just like others who could not bring forward a budget-neutral request. And I said I would be supporting that request. And I want you to just imagine for a minute that actually more than 3,000 employees, and I hate to use public safety, but let someone in public safety not have their pay correct. You know, when you got 3,000 employees and 2 people handling payroll, payroll is a big deal. And and some employees, they're nice until you mess with their money. And so we got to make sure we get it right. And
if it were my payroll, Mr. City Manager, it wouldn't matter if I was the only one. It would be important.
But I do
Let's
support.
see, Councilor Crabb.
I want to add this to the add delete list, and the reason why, I don't want us to look like we're being preferential or anything like that, but we've been talking about some things this afternoon. You know, the waste management fees, for one thing. We can be, you know, we can be so conservative sometimes, and I'm pretty conservative when it comes to finances and things like that. But sometimes we can be too conservative to our own detriment. And I think that she has a very good point that we've got to start training someone in this critical field for a future retirement. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble. It could be 6 months from now, it could be a year from now, but we've got to start getting ready for the inevitable.
And so you want to put it on the add delete
I
list?
want to put it on the
Okay.
add delete list. Yes, please.
Thank you. So next up on the agenda, we have the coroner's office, and we have Deputy Coroner here, Mr. Worley, as well as the Administrative Coordinator, Malika Hampton.
Okay, I'm Freeman Worley, Chief Deputy Coroner.
I am Malika Hampton. I'm the admin assistant to the coroner.
I'm in today for Buddy. He's out of town, and we'll be going over what he's requesting. Basically requesting additional pay for 2 of the deputy coroners. Elizabeth Allison, she's at 38,786. He wants to bring her up to 43,882. And Charles Newton, he's at 48,483. I'm sorry, 43,473. He wants to bring him up to 48,438.
And that is just to make them more comparable to the deputy coroners in the surrounding counties, especially Augusta, that has similar populations to us and similar death rates. We do have more deaths and a little bit of bigger population, but the salaries are not comparable, so we were just trying to make them so.
So the coroner over there makes 85 plus, and coroner here makes 60, and he's requesting a increase. What's his increase? To 82,140. Now I've talked to him right before we got here, and he told me that he's been trying to get her a pay increase for 9 years, and CSU has made had approved for a reclass for her to a G14. She's at 12A at 3874. Now he's wanting to know, he said he'd take everything off the table to get her a reclassification. Now that's what he's asking. If y'all just do that.
Unfortunately, we don't have a revenue source to actually fund any increases. We don't really charge for anything or have any funds that come into our department that we can use to supplement any kind of increases. So that's, one of the problems that we do have for the reclassification and for the increases for the deputy
Excuse me,
coroners.
will you pull that mic toward you a little bit? Thank you.
Again, I was saying, we don't have any revenue to really pull from to fund any kind of reclassifications or funding increases for the deputy coroner, so that is not, to our benefit. But it is just to make them more comparable to the surrounding counties. And also with the increase, if you look at the slides for the homicides, we have had a steady increase in the homicide rate for the last 10 plus years. And, each homicide takes 3 to 4 hours to investigate at the scene, plus all the countless hours that it takes after that. And the deputy coroners in our office work 24-hour shifts. So it's a long process to investigate each death, and that doesn't include the suicides and the accidents and the natural deaths that take up the 1,000+ deaths that we have every year. And then also, if you look at the next stat, if you compare the homicides for May for the last 13 years, you can see that we are more than half, almost triple from some years of the homicides. So we're in the process of having at least 60 to 80 homicides by the end of the year, and that's 3 to 4 hours every homicide, every investigation, plus the hours after the fact. So that's why he really wanted to get the deputy coroners a more, comparable income to the other counties. Sorry, did anyone have any questions?
Ms. Alexander?
No, I just wanted to make reference to the cost. I have not calculated the cost for the other reclassifications, but for the administrative assistant, the grade 12, to the administrative coordinator, grade 14, based on our promotional policy, it appears that the cost would be $3,013, but based on what is listed in this packet as far as the requested salary, that cost is a little more. Our promotional policy would place this position out from a grade 12B to a grade 14A, which is the $3,013. But what's listed here in the packet, the salary requested is $46,418, and so that would actually take the position out to that of a step K, and the cost with benefits is $15,198.
And we were also just referring to the CSU form that they sent out with the mean and median minimum and maximum increase for the pay. That's what we used to go by. But for the deputy coroners, we used the lateral increase to get those increases. And also to say that for the reclassification, it's not so much that that Buddy wants to reclassify me to do additional work. It's to reclassify me for the work that I'm already doing and have been doing for the last few years. And the same thing with the increase for the deputy coroners as well.
But the main thing he wants her a raise. I mean, not a raise, but reclassification.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Buddy said the main thing he wants is the reclassification for her. If out of all this, and he'll forget everything if he gets that reclassification.
But if we can get the increase for deputy coroners who work very hard and diligently to help the families during the worst possible moments in their lives, he would really appreciate that as well, because the deputy coroners, they do work tirelessly every single day, past their days on holidays and weekends, to make sure that the families are taken care of, and they go above and beyond, and he would really just, respectfully request an increase in their pay.
What is your pleasure?
Does anyone have any questions for the chief deputy or myself?
It doesn't look as if they do, so. Mr. City Manager, do you have anything?
No, ma'am, I don't have anything. It looks like Councilor House is.
Mr. House?
Well, I'll support the ad for the admin assistant reclassification. That's $3,000, so we can at least look at that again.
No, I don't think it's 3,000. I think it's 15,000.
That's what's on the chart, but finance director said it was 3, I thought. 3,013.
Are they asking for 3,000 or 15,000?
We were just going by the reclassification form that was sent to us by CSU, based on the stats that were put on there, so.
Right, so in accordance with our promotional pay policy, which is.
What are they asking for?
They're asking for something higher than that. It would be a grade 14K.
And that's how much?
$15,198.
Okay, that's what they were asking for. So are you trying to do what they're asking for, or the 3,000?
The 3,000.
Okay. What did you?
It's $3,013
Okay.
to reclassify the position from a grade 12B to a grade 14A.
Okay. So you're adding $3,013. Okay. He's adding $3,013.
And that was Councilor House.
If you will get with them and make sure they understand what we've done. Okay?
Yes.
What has been proposed.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Okay.
Last department on the agenda is our.
But certainly not least.
That's right.
Is our elections department. And Director Nancy Borden and I have been in conversation about her request she's coming to make today. There is no handout here, but I'll let her make that request.
Thank you. Madam Budget Chair, members of council, first I'd like to say thank you to the City Manager, Dr. Hughley, and to the Finance Director, Ms. Alexander, for helping me figure out how to accomplish what I need to accomplish and what I hope to accomplish in this request today. What I'm asking for is the reclassification of an Elections Technician 2 from a G13 to an Election Operations Manager, a G17. This position has been submitted to CSU, and they are who came up with the G17 and the position name. I had just submitted it for reclassification. The total amount requested is $7,767. That will be accomplished and will be budget neutral by reducing the number of permanent part-time hours from the budgeted 29 hours for 3 positions to 25 hours for those 3 positions. The finance director went through the previous 3 budget years, and those permanent part-time positions never used their full 29 hours, all 3 of them. So this would be a budget neutral request.
Councilor Tucker.
I would like to add that to our ad. So I did it the right way.
Okay, Councilor Tucker has added that budget neutral position. Anybody else? Anything else?
I want to say something before the Director of Elections makes her exit.
Sure,
I
Mr.
was
Mayor,
at
go
the
ahead. You're the
law.
star of the fourth grade at Northside Schools.
That's right, with one pupil anyway. No, I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Ms. Bourne. I was there as she was named by the Columbus Bar Association as a recipient of the Liberty Bell Award, which is given to people for long. And it's a very special award. It's given to a non-legal professional who has had a long-term positive impact on her, not just her area, but also her community. And she's been one of the leading experts in the United States on elections, and I just wanted to congratulate her again.
Thank you very much. As I said in my remarks too, I certainly could not do it without the leadership and the confidence placed in me by the council and by our city manager, by the mayor, by the members of the group who helped me accomplish what I need to accomplish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bourne. Ms. Alexander.
Well, that is the last department presentation we have for today. Again, we are meeting on May 25th, not next week, which is the 18th. We're meeting on May 25th, but budget review starts at 2 p.m. on May 25th, in which we'll cover all the items on the add delete list. And I will send that list out hopefully by the end of this week with the tally in terms of the impact of the additions and deletions.
If you can get that out to us as soon as possible.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll be back in the South Hall, right?
Yes, back in the South Hall on the 25th.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, do you want to dismiss us, or shall I? With no further business, the meeting is adjourned.